Joining me now to talk about this call for an investigation is one of the House members leading the charge, Congressman Andy Barr of Kentucky. He serves, as I mentioned, on the House Foreign Affairs Committee as well as the Financial Services Committee. Congressman, welcome back to the program.
Tony, great to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
Now, let's talk about this. According to the leaked reports, around 200 times John Kerry gave sensitive information about Israeli military operations, primarily in Syria, to the Iranian foreign minister. This is quite significant, is it not?
Absolutely. Imagine a U.S. Secretary of State, former Secretary of State, divulging sensitive, perhaps classified, top-secret military-related information to the sworn enemy of the United States and our key ally in the region, the State of Israel. And if these reports are true, then not only did John Kerry undermine our critical American-Israeli alliance, he really turned his back on Israel. He betrayed Israel, and I would argue because Israel is this island of moderation and a democracy in an otherwise very dangerous part of the world, he really threatened U.S. and undermined U.S. National security interests as well. And this is a kind of a pattern for John Kerry. He has a very bad habit of cozying up with the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. We know this because he's not only the architect of the flawed Iran nuclear deal, but he clearly appears to be, if these reports are true, putting his own personal ego and his interest in salvaging this flawed JCPOA ahead of U.S. national security and certainly above the security of our friends in Jerusalem.
Now, Congressman, do we know the time frame in which these revelations were to have occurred?
Well, we know that that John Kerry has admitted having two conversations with the Iranian Foreign Minister, Mohammad Zarif, during the period of time when Secretary Pompeo and the Trump administration, the previous administration, was directly in the process of withdrawing from the flawed agreement and reimposing sanctions and initiating a maximum pressure campaign. If that timing, if that timeline is accurate, then we have John Kerry working directly at odds with U.S. foreign policy, something akin to a shadow diplomacy that was actively undermining the official policy of the United States. And look, I mean, that policy of the United States that former President Trump was pursuing was an effort to correct a major error in foreign policy that the previous administration, the Obama administration, had pursued, a policy of appeasement that gave the mullahs in Tehran billions of dollars in cash that enabled them to pursue a ballistic missile testing program and provide a huge injection of cash into the hands of Iran's terror proxies, which were in the process of destabilizing the region. So Iran used the Iran nuclear deal to promote its terrorist goals through proxies in the Middle East. And President Trump was in the process of reversing that when it appears that John Kerry was actively trying to undermine the official policy of the United States, a policy that was intended to and in fact did reestablish deterrence against the world state sponsor of terrorism.
So my final question for you, Congressman Barr, is could this in fact have been, could he have engaged in illegal activity, something that ran afoul of the law?
Yes, and that's why we believe, we meaning Congresswoman Wagner and Congressman Zeldin, why we wrote to the Inspector General at the State Department. We want to know what the State Department knew and when they knew it. We want to know the status of John Kerry's security clearance. We want to know if, as a result of these leaks and this shadow diplomacy, this disclosure of sensitive military information about our key ally, if that put the Israeli Defense Forces in danger of retaliation. We want to know if there was any retaliatory attacks launched on our Israeli allies. We need to get to the bottom of this, and we want the State Department Inspector General to take this seriously. It doesn't appear that the current Secretary of State is taking it seriously, because he dismissed our calls for an investigation as political. It's not political. It's about loyalty to our ally and defending U.S. national security.
Well, Congressman Barr, we want to find out what you hear back, and also find out what is discovered, if in fact there is an investigation. So we want you to come back on and talk about it. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Tony. Appreciate it.
All right.